Today I wanted to shoot a review of this saber, which is the new Kirak saber from Bendu Armory. Now this is the first, I say with qualification that I'll explain in a moment, this is the first Canon lightsaber from Bendu Armory. Now if you're used to Bendu Armory, their designs are usually a little bit more like this. This was their Obsidian model, which was their flagship. This is one of their newer Shoto models, but you'll notice that there's a lot of swirly curves and all kinds of things in here. These are kind of reminiscent of the organic lightsaber designs from the Legends series, featured with people like Darth Talon, and some of the designs from the Old Republic sabers. But these are rather unique designs that Bendu Armory came up with that are not seen really anywhere else. They make their stuff out of carbon fiber, so it's a fluid medium, so it's not the hard edges that you're used to with machined aluminum hilts, but they are made for durability. I've got a video where I throw some of these down a concrete hallway, and they come out just fine. So they're designed to take a beating. They're designed to have this sort of more organic and fluid look. So that usually doesn't lend itself exactly to Canon lightsabers, especially not things from main franchise area like episode 1 through episode 9. So the Kirak is the first one where they've attempted to take what they do, the fluid medium, and use it to make something that's actually from the Star Wars universe. Now I say first design with qualification because there was an ill-fated Ahsoka run using metal a while back, and there aren't very many of them out there. They didn't run them for very long, so I'm not going to count that one. But the Kirak saber is modeled after a rather obscure lightsaber that is actually the subject of a lot of interest within the lightsaber community, and that is the saber that becomes the first Sith saber of Darth Vader. Now when Disney sort of nixed the entire Legends and started over again with canon, the Darth Vader comic book series brought in this whole idea of, in order to have a Sith saber, you have to kill a Jedi, take his saber, corrupt the Kyber crystal, and turn it red using the dark side, etc. So this saber is is modeled after the Kirak saber, which is the saber that Darth Vader took from a defeated Jedi and corrupted and turned into his own saber. So in essence, this is Darth Saber's first lightsaber. So if you really want to be obscure, you could wander around with a Darth Vader cosplay and carry this saber, and it would technically work, though a lot of people wouldn't recognize it because they'd be looking for that monstrosity that Vader usually carries. So the Kirak saber, it's obscure, it doesn't last very long, but it does have a place within actual canon. So here's a little bit of a close-up of it. You have an emitter section up here. This is where the removable chassis hooks in. You've got a ribbed or ringed section here. This is going to be the carbon weave that you have from Bendu Armory. So if you've got like a red carbon fiber weave, this will be the red part. If you've got a wood or a copper weave, that's this part right here. This part is going to be that sort of fibery gray that their carbon fiber is, that kind of looks like, if you've ever seen a top hat made out of beaver pelts, it kind of looks like that. It's got a sheen and a directionality to it. All right, this area down here is also that gray, and then these areas right here are the carbon fiber weave again. And there's actually some weave in these little accent points right here. So it doesn't exactly, because the weave doesn't look like what's on the original saber, it doesn't look exactly like the original saber, but the design is pretty dang close. And it's got this sort of long, gradual curve to it, and this nice pommel. So an interesting thing about this pommel, I think this is the saber that's the most usable as a walking stick that I've ever seen, because this pommel is actually really sturdy. So there's a bunch of people out there who convert lightsabers into walking sticks or canes. This is a very good model for that because of the shape. Alright, so a couple things about this. It's modeled after the canon. It's got the carbon fiber portion, or the carbon fiber weave portions, and the raw carbon fiber portions. This saber actually now takes the place as the longest single saber that Bendu Armory makes. So clearly it's not as long as the staff, but you can see next to the staff that it's a pretty long one. A lot of their newer models are things like the Shotos, and here it is next to a Shoto saber. Previously, their longest single-handed model was the Radium, which is their two-handed model. Here it is next to a Radium, so still a bit longer. So this is a rather massive saber that's very good for two-handed use. The curve in it is very slight, so it's not going to be anything like if you ever try to use like a Saberforged Bane or even a replica or Count Dooku model, that curve creates a directionality so that you can only hold the saber one direction or it's pointed off in some sort of wonky way. This curve is slight, so you can actually maneuver it around a little bit and it doesn't really get in your way, but it does still give you that directionality a little bit so that if you're using a flat blade, you can keep track of which direction the flat blade is going. So I like the little bit of curve. It's a long saber, it's a sturdy saber, it's a dueling saber, and it actually works as a cosplay. One thing that I would mention about this, the vents on this. There are no vents in the pommel, which is nice because it keeps the pommel nice and round in case you want to use it for, like I said, a cane. It also gives you some place to customize. If you wanted to put something or etch something or Dremel something into that pommel, you certainly could. The sound vent is down here, so the sound actually comes out from here. One problem with that is that sometimes you're going to cover that with your hand, which kind of mutes the saber. I say kind of because the carbon fiber itself, unlike aluminum, actually allows sound to pass through. Some of their models, like the Radium, have no sound vents at all. Okay, this does dull the sound a little bit, but you can still hear it really well through the carbon fiber, and it actually comes out all over the place as opposed to coming out through specific vents. One of the things that you may be used to if you're using a really loud saber is when you spin it around, when the vents are pointed your direction, it gets louder. When they're pointed away from you, it gets quieter. So when you spin it around, there's a variation in volume. When you have no vents and the whole saber is just leaking sound all over, then that doesn't happen. This one's got a vent, but it's not a very big vent, and it's a vent that can be easily muted if you want it to. The chassis that's in here only goes back to about here. So if you're not using their counterbalance or their brass counterweight add-on, this thing does become very top-heavy, and this whole section down here keeps very light. Okay, that makes things like flips and tricks rather difficult to pull off with this. If you are using the brass counterweight, then that puts a lot of weight right here, which actually translates to the back of this lightsaber, so it actually sets the point of balance further down off the blade, further down off the emitter, which actually makes it a whole lot more usable. So if you're going to go with this saber, be prepared for it to be longer, but it is a nice, very interesting, rather uniform design that doesn't have all the swirlies that a lot of the other Bendu Armory things have. So if you're not into those swirlies, this one looks a lot more like a traditional lightsaber than a lot of the others. Now, one thing also that I would mention here is the weave that I went with here is their forged weave, which is a thicker weave than any of their other weaves and is something that they came up with as an original. One sort of problem with the forged weave is it's a lot more prone to having pits and air bubbles in it. That sort of lends to the organic look of the carbon fiber, and I actually kind of like it, but I wasn't prepared for it when it came in, so I actually contacted the owner and asked him if that was supposed to be that way or if it was a flaw. But be prepared for pits and imperfections in the weave if you're going with the forged weave. If you're going with any of the wood weaves, that's also something that you got to look out for. If you're going with a traditional sort of basket weave, carbon fiber weave, you don't have to worry about that quite as much. So all things told, it's a carbon fiber saber, so be prepared again for slight noticing of seams. It's very slight, but you can kind of see that seam right there. Slight imperfections. That's because each saber is unique. Each saber is made using that fluid medium, so it's not a precise science like plugging something into a CNC machining operation and having it just crank out the same thing over and over and over again. Each saber is going to be individual. All right, so here it is, the Kirak saber, suitable for really sort of obscure Vader cosplays or just individual or custom builds. Suitable for dueling. A little bit tricky for tricks and tosses because of the length, but definitely usable because of the balance. works with their interchangeable chassis system. Hopefully this review has been of use to you guys, and if so, join me back for more. I'll be doing a balance test on this to show you guys how it works out in the wild a little bit later down the road.